All right. And good morrow. That is to say, good morning with you, wherever you are at in your day. Let's capture some of the beautiful light that's going on. Thank you. My format in these mornings is to give usually 30 seconds of silence. I would argue contemplatively bird song, perhaps. And I have to brace it. Okay. I'm deeply aware I've got a shotgun microphone pointed at my mouth, and I'm walking up a hill. Yesterday I was in the rain, and I had the microphone 5 centimetres, perhaps, from my mouth. You could certainly tell my lack of exercise in the latter part of my life, more so. I don't wish to repeat my lack of cardiovascular performance demonstrated in yesterday's recording. So I'm going to plateau out a little bit here and walk a little bit more, not so uphill. The format of these walk and talks is to redress, I guess, somatic reality, the topics that come up in the course of a day that might linger, be with me in the next day. And I try to scoff down a breakfast before coming out, so I've got the energy, I suppose, to walk around. But it's tricky because, of course, I have to try to keep my mind somewhat zenful at that point. The exact opposite of any other, I guess, channel where a presenter would take time to contemplate their thoughts or have a script ready to go and come up with some humour, perhaps, during those moments. And I guess as I've learnt with my process, all the good humour I come up with prior to my walk, the nature of these walks is to deal with these rising thoughts. I don't bring that humour then with me. I've actually learnt to not attempt to think about anything. A bit zenful, I suppose, a bit meditative. I don't know what that is on that seat. It's kind of where I was going to go, but whatever that is, looks like a giant spider, a little bit of a branch. I guess that comes down to fear, doesn't it? That's kind of exactly what I did want to redress regarding my partner and I. Sometimes we watch Chewy channels, the exact opposite of what we believe in. We try to listen to people expressing the counter opinion, I guess, to the way we live our lives, or the things that we take for granted. I guess in a way to try to understand what I'd like to refer to as other people's viewpoints. But it certainly isn't. We're a greater human race. We all work together. And one group's pain arguably becomes another group's pain. In a range of ways. If only because when I go down to the corner shop, that person yelling at the cashier might have that unredressed pain as the background to their thoughts, I suppose, when bringing up and talking about completely other things. And so I guess in an attempt to try to protect either myself or anyone silly enough to come along and listen to me whinge and vent, two things I'd like to think I'm savvy enough to try to avoid on the basis of energy flows where attention goes. There is always that nature of catharsism, I suppose, the letting go of pain, redressing through it, letting it out, the old sigh moment. There is psyops in this video. See, sighs that are operational. Anyway, if we didn't have this crazy overcast day, we'd be experiencing a beautiful sunrise. Technically, we are in a high dynamic range recording format. Some of us consumers have been fortunate enough to jump ship to formats like high dynamic range and OLEDs. We're always needing media to consume that just looks amazing. Sadly, with a mono mic pointing back at me, I can't just go around sniping birdsong all through the park. It's true, I'm out here to shoot wildlife. Anyway, yesterday, having watched a few videos that were on topics that I didn't agree with, nor did my partner. We wanted to try to understand how others felt about certain topics. And it's what we've come to accept is what we now call cancel culture. And the nature of humans always being interested in the negative, possibly as a sense that it aligns with any deep pain that they feel, and therefore itself is a form of potential catharsis, or I think of it as associating with the pain. I guess if we know that we haven't resolved it ourselves, spending more time bathing in it. I mean, logically, no, it would feel that there must be a sense of release that might potentially come through that. I don't know. Do you know this camera's a lot heavier than carrying a mobile phone? Which is my normal method. When we're at internet bandwidth shaping, it's easy to walk around at 6 megabits a second with a capture that is completely unwatchable, and basically my voice is just a podcast. To do it with kilos of equipment, due to leverage, so it's second degree leverage, putting all the weight, full extension out of my arms, and trying to have them further out from my body because of the nature of a shotgun microphone pointed right at my face. Trust me, you're better off with the microphone pointed at my face if it means the lens isn't. But here we go. I do love a sense of nature. Australian bush is quite amazing. On the side of the country where the flora and fauna is actually one of our greatest assets. I would like to think of that as all over the world. There's a lot of unique things over here. Not to say that a Banksia or something that's iconic to Australia isn't. It's South Australia, is it? I don't know. Different states in Australia have different national flowers or flowers to represent their state. Seems a bit unfair if all the good ones are taken. And get left living in a place where... No, I honestly can't think of an unattractive flower. I mean, I can agree that some flowers are less attractive than other flowers, but I suppose this comes down to my take with those internet channel feeds where somebody whose opinion I completely disagree with, because they're all about coming up with some flavour of the moment heading that suits a cancel culture movement. You know, these people have millions of followers and they're just talking nonsense. But it's well presented nonsense. I mean, they're good actors, if you will. In fact, I don't believe them to be actors. They're too passionate to put the hate videos together that they make. But the problem is they sing it with a smile in their voice. They almost sing it like they're happy. And I think that's the attractive proposition of watching someone that appears to be happy while talking about topics that clearly make everyone unhappy. Especially if they've got a big old YouTube disco ball wall, one of those awards on the wall behind them, suggesting that they're successful. Because of course everybody wants to align with success. When I consider the topics that they were presenting, and basically the misrepresentation of facts. Now, I say this because I guess these topics in particular were to do with the gaming industry. And the nature of cancel culture is that a game won't be woke enough. It won't go into the issues deep enough, right? So one side of the fence will be like, oh no, it was ingenuine, it wasn't good. And then the other side will come along and go, oh, how dare you force me to play a game with those elements in it. The argument that my partner would like to say is, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And really it just comes down to a deeply hurt society trying to express itself and attacking the creative media that at any other time in history would have been championed for giving an ability to, be a fly on the wall and experience something that isn't their own lives. Arguably, that's kind of what digital entertainment, once upon a time, that was the purpose it served. But it did make me laugh when quoting all sorts of statistics from eras that I lived through and trying to make out that the latest iterations of games that have released into a totally different market didn't sell very well. And I couldn't help but think, yeah, but PC games in the early 2000s had become the niche. The consoles were where all the entertaining games went, and hardcore role-playing games in particular were sort of the last great bastions that the PC gamers identified as owning. And we're more than happy in a limited game market where you had nothing to buy and high-end PC hardware. Of course you would play those games. They would sell well. But in the modern market where everyone can rent games, possibly for a month, for a small outlay, why would you buy a hyper-expensive title that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make and sells at a price representative of that? Which I guess is why Grand Theft Auto are kind of going, hey, we're going to sell out, we're going to put the price up 30% because we know that people buy this game once and then play it for a very, very, very long time, and so people will buy it. We'd be mad to not just make the extra money. But it arguably is good for the industry in that it qualifies that in terms of entertainment per hour or $1 price point, that maybe we do need to revise these things, because I also see people attacking what I consider budget game price points in niche markets made as niche products simply because of the age restriction that's put on them. If you try to release an R18 plus game, you sell to very, very few people. If you then go and sell that on a limited selling platform such as virtual reality, you sell to very, very few people. And if you then go and implement hardcore mechanics, which are generally the sorts of, I used to like the hardcore role-playing games, and Bethesda is an example. Each time they dumbed down their hardcore role-playing systems, where they might have been math-heavy and rule-heavy, you'd need to put, you generally restarted your game 2 or 3 times. You might play 20 hours in before you learnt some of the systems. And you go, okay, now I'm going to start another character and I'm going to build my skill tree a particular way to make use of that. Well, that's not how the modern world works anymore. Games get crucified if they don't give you the ability to reassign your points and remake your character on the fly, because heaven forbid gamers are encouraged to learn game systems under themselves. Then every so often a hardcore game comes out like Elden Ring. And I'm not saying it's hardcore because of the nature of how difficult some of the bosses are, but because it doesn't explain the systems to anybody, and that you're there to have to learn. And it's actually a rewarding hook unto itself. So getting back to what I was saying about if you're selling a niche game, for example, a mature title, and then you're selling it into a niche market, for example, one that doesn't have a lot of hardware sales, so that you can potentially sell a lot of game units. And if you then go and put mechanics in the game that not everybody favours, so in the game I'm talking, Alien Rogue Incursion, is that you've got weighted weapons. In the crazy oversaturated first-person shooter market, when Killzone, the original game, started throwing around weighted weapons, that is to say, your turning speed in game would be limited by, if you're carrying a giant, well, right now I guess my parallel is this camera. I'm not going to turn as quick as if I've got a small hand camera, a pocket camera, or a phone in my hand. about the weight of what I'm carrying. If we were simulating that in game and limiting my turn speed or my reaction time because of the hardware I'm carrying, I myself would like that. That for me makes it more immersive and role-playing. In the virtual reality space, it's just to the next level. It's the most. I can't stop playing. The problem is then that makes me a fan, I suppose. I can imagine if people were watching, if I had a YouTube channel, and they'd be like, "Oh, look at the extremism of this person believing in this product, liking it." My experience is completely different to that. And those people do like to pick up a microphone. The problem is that they don't create their own content necessarily. That would require being a proactive member of society or being in an upright position in life where they have their creative juices flowing. But no, instead they're angry. And so it's easier to put a takedown on somebody else's work. I guess I would argue that's why I don't attack any of these channels in particular that I was seeing putting out crazy negative media and really misinformed media. I guess this comes down to the nature of lies, damn lies and statistics. It's that the numbers, whilst we could say they're representative, it always is, well, what filters have we put on? What are the limitations to that sample? Basically, where did you get your sample from? Oh dear. I was in science in school. I was fortunate enough to be in I guess they called it a smart science class. And so you got to love it when you qualify yourself as potentially studious. The teachers, for some reason, trust teenagers more than the students that are more honest and don't turn up to class or overtly smoke their drugs just on school premises and smell, a particular way. The teacher's like, oh, those ruffians. And then all the clean-cut students that are just as damaged in the head, they're going through just as much of a difficult world, just as much, I mean, if we look at sexual abuse and emotional abuse, chances are that nobody's really survived their childhood intact. And so you get these young adults, of which I've been one. I've actually practiced at being that young adult. I'd like to say my, what's the term, arrested development. my sense of childish play in nature as a grown person probably isn't what I aspire to be when I look at monks and their empty cupboardness and their ability to be living free in the moment. No doubt it's probably a state of arrestation from pain earlier in my life that is still yet to be dealt with. Who knows? I guess the best comedians, the best cheery role models that society has put forward generally have some of the worst depressions. And that eventually sometimes it wins out, and that's what makes the news, and that's where we go, wow, that person brought joy to the lives of so many. But if you go to an interview with them, they're just like, well, I've experienced pain and I've realised that I don't want to champion that. I don't want to put that on anybody else. So I go out of my way to do something a bit better. And I'm not trying to skirt a topic there. I'm neither here nor there on any of that. I do have stresses in my life to do with upcoming required overhauls and complete shifts. I think everyone's got that going. I think the state of the planet right now, as we all deeply know that we can't continue the way we've been going. So I'm not going to pretend that my stresses are more than anyone else's, or less. That I'm somehow an intact and healthy person. But the purpose of these videos usually is to explore a theme, and I really don't want to take on board cancel culture. If a deeply hurt personality that's been rewarded had those endorphins because of their ability to argue on a complex topic, and that's become their little joy circle. By attacking the unhealthy aspects of the way they engage, I'm essentially attacking their potential for happiness, which the ability for that conversation to go downhill rapidly, I think South Park summed it up best with the "I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole." But I do have to reflect on cancel culture working so hard in the entertainment industry against people who are actively trying to make a positive product. So if we go back a few years to Hogwarts Legacy, when it was coming out, cancel culture came out in full effect right before the game launched. And it was because they saw the person who'd created the source materials from which the game really wasn't drawing necessarily directly. They'd even set the game in time well before the world of, well, Hogwarts as we'd come to know it through mainstream media. And the team of hundreds of people had all had their independent beliefs. They were all actually quite a diverse team, an amazing group of people, and they'd run with what I figured was good script. But cancel culture again came at them from both sides. One side saying, "You're not going deep enough," and the other side going, "Oh, how dare you make me play a game with your values in it." All right, you gotta love it when somebody uses the word preachy of others and essentially saying that my values are so right, my values are so elite or so correct that everybody should subscribe to them. You know, you really want to say, well, pot calling kettle there, pot calling the kettle black. Colloquialisms I don't feel safe using anymore because we've all grown up differently now. Once upon a time it was the way we could communicate effectively and quickly. One of my favourite movies of all time is a movie called Amelie. And one of the aspects of learning a stranger in that was how many sayings do you know? And I have to kind of agree, that's the world I came up in, and I often like to refer ever so briefly. And anyone who's heard them many, many times doesn't need to hear the whole sentence, right? As they start hearing it, they're like, yes, every time in my life when someone said that to me, I know, right? You've basically brought them back to reality or reminded them of what is more important. So we can all argue that clean water and breathable air is important, but if you take those things away from someone, they'll remember that straight away. But if you give someone the freedoms to live in a safe world and prop them up and give them everything they need, then they can argue for the lint in their navel, because that's their biggest drama that is going on. And as a society, we're not really ever vigilant to the real things that are threatening us as a race, the collective, because we've all been empowered to be worried about our own personal shoelaces. And the nature of, I think Moby had a heading on one of his discs. It was like, give an idiot a mic. That's how I feel every day I leave the house with microphones. I'm an empowered monkey. And the nature is we all are. And of course we've all been told that all opinions are equal. All right, it's constitutional right, if arguably, and our basic human rights. We all should have a voice. It's true. As for whether or not all voices are equal in value to what they bring to the human race, well, no, I guess I've been skirting around on this video that I don't particularly believe that. Do we need the freedom of speech? Yes. Do we need to have a world where people are so deeply hurt that the natural aspects of the human brain that leans on hearing painful stories and finds a form of bliss or release by doing so? It's not necessarily... I guess we just need better forms of medicine, not necessarily in the forms of chemical medicine. But of course, time is something we're all limited in equally. And arguably, who's got the time in their day to meditate? I don't think I've meditated in decades. As a teenager, I did a stress and relaxation class in my high school instead of sports on a Thursday. I used to love that class. I literally didn't need to drown my sorrows manually after connecting with, I always think of the Godhead. Certainly something that's more blissful and enlightening than the human state. But I have to admit that in later decades, high-paced nature of the world and the hard work that is stilling one's mind, that I think if you could sell me a tape with the word meditation written on it, that's the easy way out. I would hate to pull the holier than thou aspect of, I do meditation tapes. Completely the opposite. I would find that I don't ever spend enough time doing said things, and I do actually feel it's a precursor or a requirement before I pick up a microphone and do these walks, that I should in fact take my mind through a 30-minute inner journey towards silence, such that the nature of these walks and talks being a process where the thoughts of yesterday that are most prominent, that are meant to rise to the surface, would actually then be of potential value to more people, because I've taken myself out of the equation. I'm less in that state of ego. It doesn't happen. We know it doesn't happen. Heck, anyone watching my materials knows it doesn't happen. I'm still too busy trying to quote the statistics of sale numbers for role-playing games of the early 2000s in the PC space versus selling role-playing games in the modern market. And that isn't to say that recent products haven't undersold. But I do see the sensational arguments that people try to create. They try to come up with all these facts to support their arguments, their cause, if you will. And I just feel that a lot of them are very misrepresentative. But I guess that just is a case of I'm on one side of the fence. And I can put up with a certain amount of frustration only for so long before eventually, well, give an idiot a microphone and here we are. But it's not so bad. I mean, this is quite beautiful. I really feel I've missed that sunrise. We know it's still relatively early because the council has deemed to still run the streetlights. And I really just cranked my ISO brightness. And I had it at 10,000 when I was trying to see that little street cat in my carport right before I left the house. I had the street cat on yesterday's video as well, and it was my intention to get back to the nature of that cat at the end of the video, but I think I ran out of footage or motivation to record. Don't know. But yeah, gorgeous little street cat. I think it's going to get rehoused with my child. The children at the other house, they can have that one. We've got a cat, but our cat's also a street cat rescuer, deeply unsocial. Doesn't really put up with any strangers. And in a house with 4 or 5 kids and parents that aren't really savvy to anybody's needs but their own. Oh, look at that, put the boot in. I just know a door will get opened and that cat will get out. And at the moment I'm in a capital city and probably about 30 k's south of them. And there's major rivers to have to cross. And whilst I've put that dilemma on that cat at other times in its life, my partner had built a cat haven or a cat sanctuary. She'd been doing wildlife rescue for most of her life, and she'd built this incredible house out in the middle of nowhere on 88 acres and had all these cat pathways up in the ceiling, little safe cat zones that she would never walk into, and it had put quite a few cats in this place, and they were all indoor cats permanently from the point they went there. She had an atrium connected to the side of the house that was much larger than any of the living zones. It was just a full jungle zone. So the cats could technically get outside, arguably. They could have their little play zone. Now, her cats had been there for over decades. Briefly when we were relocating to the city so my child could go to a special school to nurture softness. In hindsight, possibly a mistake. Taking an explosive element and putting them all together. A particularly soft kid. Again, what I was saying about if the joy a person finds is through championing their pains and talking about particularly difficult subjects, but having everybody in the room go, yeah, that's great, right? All the happy chemicals that come with that. Oh dear, it's a powder keg to put them all together. That's all I'm saying. If anything, we need to widen the spectrum. And the best way to bring that balance, I mean, just look at the nature around us. Green being in the middle of the colour spectrum is the healthiest colour in nature. And you've got your ultraviolet and your infrared on either side of it. And for we as humans, we kind of need to be in that green zone. Everything is green. Everything is zen. I don't know, it's a good song. So, yeah, my cat briefly we're relocating to the city. Gets put in my partner's house. My cats had never, inside of, 14, 15 years, had not escaped. My cat wasn't in there a day and a half. Very unsocial, didn't handle these super gentle, nice cats. That was a nightmare for it. And so Gigi Zelda escaped. That was really hard. It was obviously, we'd moved hundreds of kilometres to the main city. And I wanted to see that cat again, but I knew it had no point of reference other than a township like 20 kilometres away from where it had escaped from. A place it had been in for a day. And it took it months and months, and it eventually turned up. It's just crazy. No word of lie, it actually turned up back at home in the wee hours of the morning. One day. And it was the first time that street cat had gone from being you're the person who provides food, to just walking up and down my body, just headbutting me, and just mewing in such a way as to communicate, going, it probably not being aware of the concept of love, but now it had learnt through the difficult times of being alone in nature and having to survive on its own merits, and having to cross rivers and whatever else, and figuring out where home is, that crazy cat radar that they've got to, see the energy or the magnetics of the world or something. But it figured its way back to this little township. It survived. 2 or 3 in the morning, just mewing at the back of the house. And it was the last possible day I'd been there. I mean, the house had been emptied months prior to that. I'd just been fortunate. I discovered the joys of a Nintendo Switch, and I would just sit there at night time. I'd go up there for like a week at a time, just play, Octopath Traveler, good game, lots of entertainment. And all of a sudden there's this little mew. To say I was happy. To say the cat was happy. The cat's personality changed after that stint in the wilderness all by itself. I think we do stand better. We're all better together. Even our animals, we are but a community. Anyway, with that, there's no point making these videos so long that they become daunting to hit play on at the beginning. I do like to capture just a little bit of the softness of the day, or the coolness of the morning, if you will. We've got a bit of a heat wave over here. So just seeing these muted colours, just really nice. Thank you for coming and joining me. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. Well wishes with you.